What's up guys, it's Haley and welcome to another bookish video. Obviously, you read the title, you know that today we're going to be going through my March wrap up, and it's a big one. I'm going to try to run through these books and these stats super fast because I read 18 books in the month of March and I have very strong feelings about a lot of them. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the stats portion. As I mentioned, I read a total of 18 books in March for a total of 5,917 pages. Here is the mood breakdown. 10 of the books that I read were dark and mysterious. So those are the two big sections you see. And then I have some more tense, funny, emotional, and lighthearted books on the other side. As for the pace, I read mostly medium-paced books in the month of March, which is different for me. I usually read really fast-paced books, but we had a little bit of slow in there as well as mostly medium. A third of the books that I read were under 300 pages and 2/3 were in that sweet spot, the 300 to 500 page range. All the books I read this month were fiction, and here's the genre breakdown. So I read, as you can see, mostly mystery thrillers with a few romances and horror thrown in there. Across all of my 18 reviews of these books, I had an average rating of 3.57 stars because the ratings are really spaced out. Like usually I would say if it's a 4 or above, it's a good average rating, but I did have quite a few 1 and 2 star books this month. I actually had 2 1 stars, 2 2 stars, a 2.5 star, a 3 star, and then it jumps up to 7 4-star books, a 4.75 star book, I know, I'll talk about it, and 4 5-star reads this month. This is the graph breakdown of how I read these pages throughout the month. It was pretty steady, although there was a stretch that I read nothing towards the end of the month because I was just so burned out. Now that the stats are done, let's just go ahead and jump into the reviews. I'm gonna start, as always, with my lowest rated and work my way up to my highest rated book. As I mentioned, we do have 2 1-star reads for March. Very sad. And they were both romances that I had super high hopes for, but ended up falling really flat for me. The first 1-star book that I read in March was Cheat Day by Liv Strotman, and this I really wanted to like. It is a contemporary romance, but the focus isn't necessarily on the romance, it's more on our female character's personal development and kind of her self-discovery and all of that. It follows this woman who is really stringent about her diet. She has a lot of perfectionistic tendencies and she controls her life by controlling her diet and how she looks, which is obviously very toxic and can be super triggering if you have struggled with disordered eating in the past or you are currently recovering from an eating disorder. I never had like a full-blown eating disorder, but I did have a lot of disordered eating tendencies throughout high school because of a really manipulative relationship that I was in. And I definitely felt some of those feelings being triggered when I read this book. However, that is not the cause of the low rating. On the romance side of this plot, the woman, while she's struggling with cheating on her diet, she's also struggling with cheating on her husband, this long-term wonderful relationship with this wonderful man. She ends up cheating on him, and I think the whole intention was for the reader to kind of have this love triangle where you're deciding, do you want her to stay with the husband or this new guy that she's cheating on her husband with?
Okay, the lighting just got so weird. I don't know what happened. Don't know how to fix it. So sorry. Hope it is all right.
But yeah, that was kind of the main plot. However, I really did not like this main character. I did not like her voice at all. I hated being inside her head, hated her so much with a burning passion. And I did have empathy for her, Obviously, I can understand struggling with perfectionism and disordered eating. They're two things that I've struggled with personally. So it takes a lot to take a character with my personal struggles and make me hate them, but somehow this author did that. I wrote in my review that I do love unlikable characters, but they must be self-aware unlikable characters. This woman was just an unaware menace who bumbled around hurting people. She needs therapy in a big way. And I do stand by that review. I think if there would have been some more fleshed out commentary on how her actions, whether it be controlling herself or other people, would be toxic and would be hurtful for herself and other people, I think that commentary would have been great. But there really wasn't any mention that the things that she was doing were very toxic and destructive. She kind of was just allowed to be this menace, and we as the reader were supposed to feel empathy for her when it really didn't feel like she grew or changed much at all throughout the book. There was no character arc. If anything, there was a character decline where she just blew up in this big dumpster fire at the end, and I was not in support of any of her actions. So while I did have empathy for her, I found it really, really hard to kind of be on her team, if that makes sense. So I had to give it a 1 star. I just can't feel those like really strong feelings of hatred toward a character and not give it a 1 star. Now, let's talk about Credence. I'm sorry, romance girlies do not come for me. But yes, I did in fact give Credence by Penelope Douglas a 1 star rating. If you're not aware of what this book is, it is a taboo new adult romance about this girl who has famous parents. Her parents are an actor and an actress, and they are really neglectful of her. They really care more about their careers and their own personal relationship than their relationship with their daughter. And they end up suiciding, and obviously she's left as an orphan. She has no parents, and in the will that her parents leave, they request that she should go live with her dad's stepbrother. So this is her step uncle. There's no blood relation. And she gets sent to live with this man in the Colorado wilderness, and they get snowed in to their cabin where they live for like 5 months out of the year or something crazy like that. They like can't even reach the village because it is so remote and dangerous out there. So she's basically stuck in this cabin with this uncle and her 2 step cousins. And obviously, I want to stress again, none of these people are blood related, but it kind of forms a reverse harem kind of situation where all 3 men are having a relationship with this freshly turned 18-year-old girl who is in the midst of trauma and grief. It just really felt icky to me. I could go into depth about this book and talk about it for 20 or 30 minutes and tell you all the reasons why I hated it and it made me uncomfortable, and I felt like it was justifying a really toxic relationship and gratifying, almost praising, romanticizing definitely, these really inappropriate relationships. But instead, I will just leave you with
This is really, really icky.
Everything about this book made me feel really bad. And obviously the whole thing is you're supposed to like pick one of the 3 men that you're rooting for to end up with our main character. However, I was rooting for none of them. I thought there was one choice that was a bit more benign and could have been turned into an acceptable plot. However, the worst option, in my opinion, was chosen, and she chose a literal sociopath to be her forever love. And I think it was a trauma bond, and I think it was horrible, and the man was literally a sociopath. Also, the mental health rep in this book, non-existent, so bad. This author tried to make a character have selective mutism, and it was done really, really poorly. Cases like this are extremely rare, occur maybe 1 in 5 million cases of selective mutism, and I really did not like the extreme lengths that it went to for mental health things. I think there's a way to write a romance with mental health awareness Actually, I'm going to talk about one that did it really well in my 5-star reads, but this just did it really poorly to the point where I was really insulted and offended by this book. And I really, really question why people like this book. I don't get it. It's romanticizing something that is so horrible and disgusting.
Period.
Next up, we have my 2-star reads. First, we have All I Want by Darcy Bell. I actually read this in my new release thriller vlog, so I will link that up above and down below so I don't spend too much time talking about a book that I already have featured in a vlog. But basically, this is a haunted house story. A young couple moves out to the countryside outside of New York City. They buy this big mansion that is dilapidated and they're redoing it so they can live in it and start a family. However, it turns out to be haunted. The reason why I gave it 2 stars, even though I was really enjoying it and really into it for 98% of the book, was because the epilogue completely ruined the entire story for me. I think if I just pretended the epilogue did not exist, I would have given this 4.5 out of 5 stars. However,
it does exist,
so I have to give it 2 stars. For the full tea, and if you want spoilery thoughts, again, watch that vlog. And my other 2-star book that I read this month was A Touch of Jen by Beth Morgan. And by the synopsis, this book sounds like a perfect read for me. It's following this couple who is kind of weird, kind of quirky, and they become obsessed, absolutely enamored with the life of this girl called Jen, who they follow on social media and who the guy in the heterosexual couple worked with in the past. He is obsessed with her, and he gets his girlfriend to be obsessed with her, and they just stalk her, and it is so creepy, and everything has these very malicious undertones, and everyone's struggling with their mental health, and it's basically just a story of identity and confusion and how we project things onto other people, especially through social media, that we actually know nothing about. And the voice with which this book was written is really similar to something like Bunny by Mona Awad, where it's kind of trippy, you don't know exactly what's going on, but you almost understand the message without having to fully read it out in black and white, if that makes sense. And I really like books like that. Bunny is one of my favorites. However, this one just fell really flat for me. I feel like it's almost an insult to compare this book to Bunny because it did not have the execution that I was looking for. It was trying way too hard to say something that's already been said countless times. And it was saying it in a million different ways with a million different convoluted metaphors and kind of dancing around something that I felt like was a very straightforward concept. And then when you get to kind of the 2/3 of the way point into the book, the 2 only likable characters in the entire story that you're rooting for get killed off.
I swear to God, I almost DNF'd. When that happened, I was pissed.
I usually love weird books, and I love things about obsession, about stalking, about the darker undertones of social media. But this one was just way too pretentious for my taste, and I think it's that brand of pretentious where the author really thinks she's doing something, but she actually didn't. And I just know that the people that I hate watch on YouTube are gonna eat this shit up, so. I also had a 2.5 star read this month, and that was The Sorority Murder. I also read this one in my new release thriller vlog, so again, I'm not going to dwell on it, but I just thought this was perfectly average. It is a story about a missing/murdered sorority girl from a few years ago, and a college student actually uses his senior capstone project to look into the case with a true crime podcast. So we're following the podcast, which is a really fun element. However, I thought the story was a little bit basic, a little bit boring. We've seen this type of true crime-esque podcast thriller set at a college so many times at this point, and A Good Girl's Guide to Murder just cannot be topped. So 2.5, right in the middle, very average. My 1 3-star book I also read in that vlog, and that was The Golden Couple by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. This follows a therapist who has lost her license because of her penchant for breaking confidentiality, breaking ethical codes, and using a very unique form of therapy that is not scientifically proven at all whatsoever. And we follow her as she starts to treat this couple, and the couple has a lot of shit going on, and the therapist basically digs into their lives, gets super entrenched in there, and a lot of dramatic things go down. If you like rich people drama and weird, toxic mental health things in books, then I think you'll like this, but this was just a pretty average thriller to me. I did have a little bit more intrigue because of the mental health elements. I just thought it was kind of funny to see a toxic therapeutic relationship. So I did rate it a little bit higher than just completely down the middle average. However, that does make me scared that if somebody went into this book not knowing much about therapy and they just assumed that this is what therapy is like, I just don't like that. I think mental health rep is so hard to do right, and very few books do it, so I just have to mention that. All right, next we're gonna get into my 4-star books that I read in March. The first 3 are 12 Nights at Rotter House by J.W. Oker, Sour Candy by Keelan Patrick Burke, and The Neighbors by Anya Alborn. These were all super hyped horror books that I was very excited to get to. I was so ready to get into all of these, and I did end up enjoying all of them. They were all featured in my horror reading vlog. It's pretty short, as all of these books are pretty short, so if you're looking for some quick horror reads, recommendations in that kind of realm, definitely watch that vlog for in-depth thoughts of all of these 4-star books because I really enjoyed all of them. I also vlogged myself reading The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. This is a mystery thriller that follows a girl who goes to stay with her brother in Paris because she's down on her luck, and she ends up finding out that her brother is missing. She shows up at his apartment, he's not there, and she starts questioning all these quirky people who live in the apartment building. There is the socialite, the nice guy, the alcoholic, the girl on the verge, and the concierge. Everyone's a neighbor and everyone's a suspect. I know this book had really mixed reviews, but I really ended up enjoying it. I gave it 4 stars, and I have a completely dedicated reading vlog. Wow, I'm just gonna link to every video ever in this wrap up. I also ended up reading Yes, Daddy by Jonathan Parks Ramage, and I've never read from this author before, but I was super excited to get into this LGBT thriller. It follows a young gay man just trying to make it in New York City. He wants to be a writer, but obviously it is really hard to break into that industry, but he targets somebody who he knows likes to hang out with young gay men, and he tries to put himself in a position where this man will become interested in him, maybe fall in love with him, and maybe launch his career. So he ends up doing this, but the relationship is really not what he was expecting, and it gets really, really sinister and really scary really fast, where all of a sudden he is in the middle of this very dangerous situation and he is a witness to murder. I absolutely loved this book. The writing was so heart-wrenching. I could just feel it so hard, and you guys know it is so difficult for me to align with a male main character. Usually when I have a book in front of me that is narrated by a man or just follows a lot of like male dynamics, it's really hard for me to put myself in the story and feel connected to the main character. But something about the main character in this book, I just really felt for him. I really loved him. I really just wanted to give him a huge hug and help him get out of the situation that he was trapped in. The book did a great job of drawing attention and kind kind of providing commentary on male survivors of sexual assault. It does in fact happen, and it is more common than you would think. There are tons of male survivors out there, and I think if you're one of them, this book might be triggering, but it could also help you feel really, really seen. And we follow our main character through all of these ups and downs, when he's in the middle of it, when he's in the trial, the aftermath, all of it. And following his journey, he just goes on such a wild character arc. The character development was so well done. And this book goes dark. I mean dark, dark. If you enjoy dark graphic thrillers, this is one for you. But if you're sensitive to quite a few trigger warnings, especially rape and sexual assault, I would not recommend this book for you. But for me, I really, really enjoyed it. And I know I'm talking about it like it should be a 5-star read because it was just so nuanced and so well written. However, I only rated it 4 stars because it was a little too short. The ending felt a little abrupt for me, and I wanted a little bit more. I feel like I got so attached to this character and then kind of got left out in the cold with him a little bit. And then there is a group of like evil characters, and they got a little cartoon villainy at times. It was also really hard to tell those characters apart at times. So just a few nitpicky things, but I still really loved this thriller. Next, let's talk about The Replacement Wife by Darby Kane. I think Darby Kane is quickly becoming one of my new favorite thriller authors. I loved Pretty Little Wife, gave it 5 stars. This is her second release, The Replacement Wife. I gave it 4 stars, obviously. And her books just feel like a classic thriller, if that makes sense. Like every time I read a Darby Kane book, it takes me back to when I was first getting into thrillers, like Ruth Ware and Megan Miranda and authors like that. And ooh, I just eat them up. It is so, so good. So salacious. Like, this book is filled with domestic drama, rich people drama, mommy drama, all of that good stuff. And it also has the like amnesia / gaslighting trope where there's an unreliable narrator and we don't know if we can quite trust what she's seeing since she has memory issues and since the people around her might be gaslighting her or she just might be crazy. We have no idea what's going on. We're trying to figure it out along with her, and that unreliable narration voice just keeps you on your toes the entire time. I read this one so fast. I think I read it in a day or something like that because I just had to know what happened, and the ending twist really shocked me. I never got that 5-star feeling, but I still really enjoy it and recommend it. Again, for full thoughts, this is also featured in the new release thriller vlog. And the last 4-star book I want to talk about is Stay Awake by Megan Golden. This is an arc, but it is another thriller yet again, that also has an unreliable narrator and some magical realism elements thrown in that I really enjoyed. We are following this woman who kind of wakes up and she is in this cab, not knowing where she's going, and she has a bloody knife in her pocket, and written all over her hands are the words, "Stay awake, wake up, don't fall asleep," like all of these phrases like that. And she comes to find out that when she does fall asleep, she forgets everything that happened while she was awake up to a certain point. So it's kind of like she resets back to like a very traumatic event that happened to her. Every time she falls asleep, she loses all the time that she was awake. And obviously, when you think you might have committed a murder because you wake up with a bloody knife in your pocket, it's not great when you forget about that every single night that you fall asleep. It definitely kept me on my toes, much like The Replacement Wife, because it kind of operated on the same trope where we're trying to figure out things along with our main character. There's also another perspective in this book, which is the cop, the female investigator who is trying to work on this homicide that our main character is suspected of. And that is the reason why I gave this book a 4-star instead of a 5-star. I just found myself really trying to speed read through the cop's chapters because I think investigative perspectives are a little bit boring, a little bit repetitive. They always drag a little bit compared to the bulk of the story or the main character. So I just wish they were a little bit more few and far between. But the story in itself was shocking, really well crafted, and super, super fast paced. If you are looking for another thriller kind of like this one that gives you that classic thriller feeling, like I'm talking Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins, Woman in the Window by AJ Finn,
problematic, I know,
Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware. This is so much like those. So if you like any of those, I think you will love Stay Awake. Now let's get into my 4.75 star book, The Collective by Allison Galen. This was almost a 5-star. I gotta be honest, for 75% of the book, I thought this was gonna be a 5-star read. I was in this book and I recommended it to everybody in my life who likes thrillers immediately after I finished it because it was just so good. It kicks off with a bang and it does not stop. Basically, we are following our main character, this woman who lost her daughter really, really tragically, and she knows exactly who killed her, exactly who is to blame, but our broken justice system keeps her from seeking justice for her daughter. It is kind of serving this rich white man and keeping him out of jail for the actual murder he committed for this woman's daughter. So she ends up going to an award ceremony where this guy is like getting presented with an award and having a big outburst there. She becomes a viral like meme almost. This video of her goes viral on Twitter and people are doing like hashtag psycho mom, like dragging her for losing it in front of this innocent guy. And because of this exposure, somebody reaches out to her and is like, hey, I can see you're really still in your grief for your daughter, obviously, and I think you should join the support group of other moms who have lost their kids. And she ends up getting involved with this Facebook group, and it is a little bit more sinister than just a grief support group because she ends up getting linked to a dark web forum called The Collective, where the parents of these children all take revenge on the people who killed their kids. So you can rest easy at night knowing that the killer of your child has finally gotten what they deserve. But as our character gets caught up in the collective, she realizes it is a lot more dangerous than she thought, and they might not have the best intentions like she assumed that they did. It is so dark and fast-paced, which is the two things that I look for in my favorite thrillers, so this definitely had that. I love moral dilemmas, and the whole time I was questioning myself reading this, thinking, should I be okay with this murder? But I kind of am. And there's also the women getting revenge trope that I know a lot of you guys love, me too, so I wanted to mention that. If you're looking for like a good for her type of thriller, this would definitely fit into that trope. However, I don't know if I was 100% on board with how the book ended. There were some very questionable mental health things that were featured in the end of this book that just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Like, it honestly wasn't even that bad, but to me, a therapist, I can't help noticing that kind of stuff as I'm reading. So, dang. I wish this could have been a 5-star book. It was so close, and I think it could be a 5-star for so many of you out there who aren't annoyed by the little therapy rep things. They're so good. 4.75 stars. I know I'm so picky, sorry. Now let's go ahead and get into my top 4 books of the month. These were all 5-star reads, starting out with Good Rich People by Eliza Jane Brazier. This is crazy to me because this author's last book was my worst read of 2021. Could her newest release possibly be my best book of 2022? Don't know, but it's shaping out to be that way. I absolutely loved this book. It is following these rich people who offer a guest house for lodging for people who are kind of down on their luck, can't afford really great housing, so they offer it at a lower rate. However, the people that move into the guest house don't know that the rich people they moved in with are going to be toying with them and competing to ruin their lives. It is full with juicy drama. It has a really avant-garde writing style that I enjoyed. It was super hyperbolic and just ridiculous, but so fun. And I absolutely loved the way that it ended. I highly recommend this thriller. Again, for full thoughts, live clips of me reading in the vlog, in the new release vlog. Next up, we have Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. This is a romance-ish. It's more about our female character's development. It's a contemporary story about this woman who ends up going to jail for manslaughter. And when she gets out, she has to try to find a way to rebuild a relationship with her daughter. So she moves back to the town where the dad of her daughter's parents live, because that is who is in charge of her daughter now. And she tries to get involved with her daughter's life again. And this story is very character driven. So if you don't like that, I don't think you'll like this, but I really loved seeing how every single character in this book, not even just our main characters, how they grew and how they grew together and how they learned to understand each other and have this deep empathy for somebody who has hurt them in the past, for somebody who is so wildly different from them. I just absolutely thought it was beautiful, and I sobbed at the end of this book. It is so wonderful. This is some of Colleen's best work. I love when Colleen Hoover does a romance where you know these two people are gonna fall in love, and there are love scenes and things like that, but the actual falling in love is not the focus of the story. It's more each character's individual journey and what that means for their relationship. I think books like All Your Perfects, It Ends With Us, and Reminders of Him are great examples of very nuanced real life relationships that can give you empathy for people who are different from you. And I love this book. I love it. Also, something really cool is that there's no setting ever described in here, so you can kind of place this wherever you want it to be. If you want it to be in your hometown, on a beachside town, in a big city, wherever, you can put it there in your mind. And in the afterword, Colleen Hoover actually said she did that on purpose because there are people like this everywhere, and she didn't want to limit the story to feeling like it was grounded in only one place. She wanted every woman dealing with this to be able to feel seen. Oh, it just makes me want to cry again. I fucking love this book. My number 2 book of the month was Hook, Line, and Sinker by Tessa Bailey. Y'all know It Happened One Summer was one of my best books of 2021. This is the follow-up, the Bellinger Sister number 2 book in the duology. This is the second book, basically, and the last book, I'm pretty sure. And we're following Hannah, who is the sister of the main character in It Happened One Summer, and she's kind of like feeling like she's in a rut in her career, and she's having this like long-term crush on this guy that she works with, and it's just like everything feels kind of stuck. The crush isn't moving forward, her career isn't moving forward, and so she decides to start taking these big leaps that she normally wouldn't make for herself. And she eventually falls in love with Fox, who has been told his whole life that he is a heartbreaker, a playboy, and he's really sick of the reputation and the way that that makes him feel. So he's ready to confront his trauma, and Fox and Hannah are just such a great match because Hannah is extremely self-aware, sometimes to a fault, where she will point out awarenesses in other people, including Fox, that maybe they aren't ready for, but I think she does it with great intentions. And Fox has this like sexy playboy outer exterior, but he's such like a sweet little softie on the inside. And seeing them fall in love again in this like sweet little Washington town that I loved being in the first book was just so magical. I love being back there. And this is more of a friends to lovers, I guess would be the trope in this romance book, but I feel like it's friends to lovers done in a really great way because I usually don't like friends to lovers. This isn't like a childhood friends to lovers, but sometimes, most of the time, I really don't like that. This is like oh, we're acquaintances, we're kind of texting, we're kind of interested in each other, but like we're pretty much just friends. And then when they see each other in person, it's like, oh, you are my person that I wanted to text every single night before I went to bed. And I've been constantly thinking about you. And now that you're standing in front of me, I think I'm in love with you. And I just love the way that that was done. There's also wonderful, wonderful, wonderful mental health rep in this book. I love the way that both of their psyches were approached. Again, I think Tessa Bailey, much like Colleen Hoover, is great at having our characters have individual character arcs and individual journeys outside of their relationship and touching on how their individual development impacts the relationship they have with each other. Loved it. It was so cute. It was so perfect. Like, there's really nothing more I can say. I'm just gonna keep raving about this book. It was perfect. It was amazing. And I was the guest co-host on the Sugar and Spice Book Club live show for this book. So I will link that live show down below. If you missed it, you can hear our full in-depth spoilery thoughts. And finally, drum roll please. This is my top book of the month and possibly of the year so far. One Italian Summer by Rebecca Searle. And this is out. I read the arc, but the book is out now. Y'all have to run and get it. I swear this is the book of the summer. This is the book of the summer. If you like books like The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Una Out of Order, The Midnight Library, oh my gosh, let me think, The Two Lives of Lydia Bird, anything like that, you will love One Italian Summer. This is a contemporary story with magical realism elements about a woman who just recently lost her mom, and she is really in the grief of that. They were supposed to take a trip together to the Italian Amalfi Coast, and obviously, since her mother has passed away, she either has to cancel the trip, take her husband, or go alone. So she ends up taking space from her husband and her dad and saying, I need to do this. I need to go to Italy by myself and just figure out my grief, figure out what's going on, and hopefully get some joy back. And the reason that her and her mother chose this specific resort is because her mother spent some time there in her 20s, and she always told her daughter that it was the best time of her life, and she wanted to show her daughter the place where the best years of her young life happened. So our main character goes, and it is really hard for her. She's trying to have a good time, but obviously she's caught up in this grief, and she runs into a woman on the street outside of her resort, and it is her mother from like the 70s, so many years ago when she was actually there. Somehow, because of the magical realism elements in this book, she is able to live these best times of her life with her mom, and they're at the same age, and she gets to know her mom on a whole other level, and is just so emotional and so beautiful and so nuanced. It is just written with this nuance about grief, about mother-daughter relationships, about your internal development, about regrets in your life, about long-term relationships. Like, there's just so many things that this book touched on that I think were perfect for me at this point in my life. And it does it all absolutely beautifully. I was highlighting the shit out of my Kindle copy. When you click on notes, it's like 1 million notes that I took on this book because it is just so good. I want the physical copy so bad so I can reread and physically tab it because it was just beautiful. And not to mention the actual setting and the descriptions of Italy, the food, the atmosphere. Oh my God, it was gorgeous. I want to go to Italy so freaking bad now. I loved everything about this book. Everything about it, I loved it. The moral, the message, the experience, the journey, the character development, the commentary, all of it, I loved it. I can't think of one bad thing to say about this book. You need it. If you're watching this video, go buy One Italian Summer right now. Actually, you know what? It's an add-on for Book of the Month, which means you can get it for $10. A brand new hardcover book that is my favorite book of this year. You can get it for $10. And you know how? You know how you can do that? If you're not already signed up for Book of the Month, you can click my link down below, get your first new release book of Book of the Month for $10 and get this add-on for $10. So go join if you haven't yet. If you didn't know, I have that link down there in my description all the time. But yeah, this is the best book. You need it immediately. Period. That is gonna be the end of this wrap up. Thanks for sticking with me. I know this was a long one, but I hope you got some good recommendations. If you liked this video, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Also, don't forget to go to therapy and read a book this week. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video.